My boss texted urgently, "Don't come to work tomorrow. HR found out about the fake degree." I stared at my phone screen in complete confusion. What fake degree? I had my bachelor's in marketing from State University hanging right there on my office wall. I'd graduated 3 years ago with a solid 3.4 GPA and student loans that still haunted my dreams every month. My boss Derek had always been a bit paranoid, but this text felt different, more urgent, more terrified. I called him back immediately, but his phone went straight to voicemail. That was weird. Derek lived on his phone like it was a life support system. 20 minutes later, another text arrived. "They're asking questions about everyone's credentials. Mine won't hold up under scrutiny. This is bad." Wait, what? Derek's credentials? I'd always assumed he had some fancy MBA from an expensive school, considering how he threw around business buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shifts in every meeting. But now that I thought about it, I'd never actually seen any diplomas in his office. I decided to do some light internet stalking to figure out what was going on. I pulled up Derek's LinkedIn profile, which claimed he had an MBA from Wharton Business School and a bachelor's from Harvard. Impressive credentials for someone who regularly confused quarterly with quarterfinal, and once asked me if Excel could do math automatically. But when I searched for Derek Hoffman on Wharton's alumni directory, nothing came up. Same with Harvard. That was strange, but maybe their databases weren't complete. Then I remembered something weird from last week. Derek had been acting jumpy every time anyone from corporate visited our office. He'd disappear to the bathroom for long periods and come back sweating like he'd just run a marathon. When our regional manager asked about his background during a team meeting, Derek had changed the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. My phone buzzed again. "Pack light. Road trip starts tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going." Okay, now I was officially concerned. Derek wasn't just worried about getting fired. He sounded like he was planning to flee the country. I called our HR manager, Patricia, to see if I could figure out what was actually happening. "Oh, thank goodness you called," Patricia said, her voice tight with stress. "We need to talk to you immediately. Can you come in early tomorrow?" "About what?" Derek sent me some confusing texts about not coming to work. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Where did you get your degree from again?" "State University. Marketing major, graduated 2021. Why? And you have the actual diploma? Physical copy?" "Yes, it's hanging in my cubicle." "Patricia, what's going on?" She sighed heavily. "We're conducting an audit of all employee credentials after discovering some irregularities. Derek's been very helpful in providing us with information about the hiring process." The way she said "very helpful" made it sound like Derek had thrown everyone under the bus to save himself. But what could he possibly say about my legitimate degree? My phone rang. Derek calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice shaking. "I may have accidentally included your name when I was explaining how the degree verification system worked." "What degree verification system?" "Derek, you're not making any sense. The one I used to enhance our resumes. Look, I thought I was helping everyone get better positions. The company wanted candidates with more impressive educational backgrounds, so I found a way to provide that." My stomach dropped. "What exactly did you do to my resume?" "I upgraded your degree to a master's from Northwestern. It looked more competitive. And maybe I added some honors that weren't technically on your original transcript." I pulled up my employee file on the company website. Sure enough, my profile listed a master's degree in marketing from Northwestern University, magna cum laude. Credentials I definitely didn't have. "Derek, this is fraud. This is actual, prosecutable fraud." "I know. That's why we need to leave town before they figure out how deep this goes." "We? I'm not going anywhere. I didn't ask you to fake my credentials." But Derek had already hung up. 2 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the Denny's on Route 9 in 1 hour. Come alone. Destroy this phone after reading." I stared at the message in disbelief. Derek was seriously trying to turn this into some kind of spy movie scenario. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out how to explain to HR that my boss had committed identity fraud on my behalf without my knowledge or consent. I decided to call Patricia back and explain the situation before it got any worse. "Patricia, I need to tell you something. I think Derek falsified my educational credentials in the company system without telling me." "Oh, honey," Patricia said, her voice full of sympathy. "Derek didn't just falsify your credentials. He's been running an entire fake degree mill operation for the past 2 years. The scope of Derek's scheme was staggering. He'd been upgrading the educational backgrounds of nearly every employee in our department, then charging them monthly fees for credential maintenance services, fees that were automatically deducted from payroll as professional development contributions. I'd been paying $200 a month for 2 years for fake degree services I didn't know I was receiving. How many people did he scam? 17 employees across 3 departments. He created fake transcripts, fake diplomas, even fake alumni profiles on university websites. The man was thorough. While Patricia was explaining the extent of Derek's fraud, my phone kept buzzing with increasingly desperate messages from new numbers. Derek was apparently switching phones every few hours to avoid being tracked. "They're asking about the Northwestern connection. Did you keep any paperwork?" "I'm at the Denny's." "Where are you?" "The parking lot is full of suspicious cars. This might be a setup." "I'm moving to the Waffle House." Less obvious. But that wasn't even the worst part. Patricia pulled up Derek's employee access logs on her computer. For the past 6 months, Derek had been logging into the company system at 2 a.m. every Sunday to modify employee records. He wasn't just changing degrees. He was altering salary information, adding fake performance reviews, and even creating false references from previous employers that didn't exist. "Look at this," Patricia said, showing me the screen. He gave himself a glowing performance review from Dr. Amanda Richardson, former VP of Strategic Operations at Global Tech Solutions. I googled it. There's no such company, and no Amanda Richardson in any business directory. Derek had essentially been living in a completely fabricated professional reality for over 2 years. Every promotion, every raise, every recognition he'd received was based on credentials and references he'd invented himself. The next morning, I went into work early to meet with Patricia and clear up my involvement in Derek's scheme. But when I got to the office, there was already a police car in the parking lot, along with 2 unmarked sedans and a van from the FBI's white-collar crime division. Detective Williams explained that Derek's operation had been much more sophisticated than anyone realized. He hadn't just been faking degrees for our company. He'd been selling fake credentials to people across 3 states, using our office's resources and equipment to produce official-looking documents. We found a whole diploma printing operation in his office. Professional-grade printers, embossing machines, official university seals. Your boss was running a multi-million-dollar document fraud business. The detective showed me photos from Derek's office that I'd walked past every day for 2 years. Hidden behind his motivational posters and fake plants was an entire forgery workshop. Boxes of blank diploma templates, bottles of ink that matched official university colors, even a heat press for creating raised seals. But the real shock came when they showed me Derek's client database. He'd been selling fake degrees to nurses, teachers, engineers, and even police officers across the region. People in positions where fake credentials could literally get someone killed. We found a fake medical degree he sold to someone who's been practicing as a physician's assistant for 8 months, Detective Williams said grimly. And a fake engineering degree that someone used to get hired by a construction company working on a bridge project. The FBI had been investigating Derek for 6 months after a tip from Northwestern University's registrar office. Someone had tried to verify one of Derek's fake degrees, and when Northwestern couldn't find any record of the graduate, they started digging deeper into similar inquiries they'd received. Your boss got sloppy, Agent Carson from the FBI explained. He was using the same printer serial number on documents from different universities. When we analyzed the paper and ink composition, we could trace everything back to equipment purchased with your company credit card. While we were talking, Patricia's phone rang with an update from the regional manager. Derek had maxed out the company credit cards buying supplies for his forgery operation, then submitted fake expense reports to cover the purchases. He'd claimed the equipment was for employee training materials and office modernization projects. He spent $47,000 of company money on fraud supplies, Patricia said, her voice getting higher with each revelation. And he's been billing his personal car payments and rent to our operating budget as consulting fees for the past year. The FBI had been tracking Derek's movements through his credit card purchases, and his escape attempt was both desperate and poorly planned. He'd driven to a truck stop in Pennsylvania and tried to pay cash for everything, but he'd forgotten that his credit card was still linked to his phone's GPS and payment apps. He turned off location services but kept using Apple Pay, Agent Carson explained. We've got a complete trail of his purchases. Gas in Harrisburg, food in Baltimore, even a receipt from a Walmart where he bought hair dye and sunglasses. Derek's disguise attempt was pathetic. He'd dyed his brown hair blonde, but did such a bad job that he looked like he'd been attacked by a highlighter. The Walmart security footage showed him trying on different sunglasses for 20 minutes, apparently convinced that the right pair would make him unrecognizable. But Derek's real mistake was trusting technology he didn't understand. He'd been using encrypted messaging apps to communicate with clients, but he'd backed up all his messages to iCloud using his work email account. The FBI had access to everything: client lists, pricing structures, even detailed instructions he'd written for other people who wanted to start their own fake degree operations. We found over 3,000 fake diplomas in various stages of completion, Detective Williams said. Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford, plus dozens of smaller schools. He was charging between $800 and $5,000 per diploma, depending on how prestigious the school was. Derek's pricing strategy was bizarrely sophisticated. He charged extra for degrees from Ivy League schools, offered discounts for bulk orders, and even had a rush delivery service for people who needed fake credentials quickly. He'd created an entire business model around academic fraud. The breakthrough in catching Derek came from an unexpected source: his own mother. Mrs. Hoffman had been bragging to her bridge club about her son's successful business, mentioning that Derek was helping people get the education they deserved and making 6 figures doing it. One of the bridge club ladies was a retired university administrator who immediately recognized what Derek was actually doing. She called the FBI tip line that same afternoon. Derek's mother led us right to him, Agent Carson said, trying not to smile. She gave us his childhood friend's address in Florida, where he was planning to hide out. Apparently, she was proud of his educational consulting business and thought the FBI would be impressed by his entrepreneurial spirit. When they caught Derek, he was holed up in his friend's beach condo, still trying to run his fake degree operation remotely. He'd set up a laptop on the balcony and was taking orders from new clients while simultaneously researching countries without extradition treaties. The police found Derek surrounded by printed maps of South America, a Spanish-English dictionary, and 17 different fake IDs he'd been practicing signing. He'd also been watching YouTube tutorials on how to disappear completely and had taken detailed notes on offshore banking. But Derek's most ridiculous mistake was continuing to post on social media throughout his entire escape attempt. He'd been updating his Instagram story with photos of my Florida vacation, apparently forgetting that location data would show exactly where he was staying. He posted a selfie on the beach with the condo building visible in the background. Detective Williams laughed. We didn't even need to trace his phone. We just looked up the building address from his Instagram post. When they arrested Derek, he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, flip-flops, and the terrible blonde dye job. He'd also gotten a sunburn that made his disguise even more obvious. His scalp was bright red where the hair dye had irritated his skin. Derek's first words to the arresting officers were reportedly, "Is this about the degrees? Because I can explain everything. It's actually a very sophisticated business model." The FBI search of Derek's temporary hideout revealed the full scope of his delusions. He'd written a 30-page business plan for expanding his fake degree operation internationally, including detailed financial projections and marketing strategies. He thought he was going to franchise the operation, Agent Carson explained. He'd calculated that he could make $10 million annually by selling fake degrees in developing countries where credential verification is less sophisticated. Derek had also been working on fake degrees from universities that didn't exist. He'd invented International University of Business Excellence and Global Institute of Advanced Studies, complete with fake websites, fake faculty profiles, and fake accreditation documents. The investigation revealed that Derek's scheme had earned him over $2.8 million in 3 years, but he'd been living paycheck to paycheck despite the illegal income. He'd been spending money as fast as he made it on luxury cars, expensive vacations, and a gambling addiction that nobody knew about. He'd been losing thousands of dollars every weekend at Atlantic City casinos, Detective Williams said. The fake degree money was basically funding a gambling problem that started in college. Derek's casino losses explained why he'd gotten so desperate about expanding his operation. He owed $180,000 to various creditors and had been taking increasingly dangerous risks to generate more fake degree sales. The trial was a media circus. Derek's defense attorney tried to argue that he was providing alternative educational pathways for people who couldn't afford traditional college. The prosecutor countered by bringing in victims whose lives had been endangered by people with fake credentials Derek had sold. The most damaging testimony came from a hospital in Ohio where someone with a fake nursing degree Derek had created had nearly killed a patient by administering the wrong medication. The nurse had no actual medical training and had been making life-threatening mistakes for months before being caught. Derek got sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. The judge was particularly harsh because of the public safety implications of Derek's crimes. "You didn't just steal money," Judge Morrison said during sentencing. "You put innocent people at risk by enabling unqualified individuals to work in positions requiring actual expertise and training. As for the rest of us victims, the company handled the situation better than expected. They corrected everyone's credentials in the system, refunded the money Derek had stolen through fake fees, and provided free legitimate professional development courses. I ended up getting promoted to Derek's position as interim manager, partly because I was one of the few people in the department who actually had the educational background originally listed in my job application. The experience taught me to always verify my own employee records and to be suspicious of any boss who insists on handling all the HR paperwork personally. The aftermath revealed how many red flags we'd all missed. Derek's office hours had been erratic for months. He'd been defensive about any questions involving his background. He'd avoided company social events where people might have asked detailed questions about his supposed alma mater experiences. Most tellingly, Derek had never once mentioned specific professors, classmates, or campus memories from the prestigious schools he claimed to have attended. When coworkers talked about their college experiences, Derek would always change the subject or give vague responses about focusing on studies. The FBI investigation also uncovered Derek's practice runs, smaller frauds he'd committed before scaling up to the fake degree operation. He'd been selling fake professional certifications on eBay, creating fake references for people applying to jobs, and even producing fake marriage certificates for people trying to qualify for insurance benefits. Derek's downfall ultimately came from the same trait that made him successful at his legitimate job: attention to detail. He'd kept meticulous records of every fake degree sale, every client interaction, and every fraudulent document he'd produced. When the FBI seized his computers, they found a complete accounting of his entire criminal enterprise. The case became a cautionary tale used in corporate training programs about employment verification and background check procedures. Derek's story is now taught in business ethics courses as an example of how small compromises can escalate into major criminal behavior. Derek writes letters from prison occasionally, but they're mostly complaints about the quality of the prison's computer lab and requests for money to fund his appeal strategy. He still doesn't seem to understand that what he did was fundamentally wrong, describing his crimes as ahead of their time rather than illegal fraud. The whole experience taught me that the most dangerous criminals are often the ones who convince themselves they're providing a valuable service. Derek genuinely believed he was helping people achieve their career goals, even as he put lives at risk and destroyed the concept of legitimate educational achievement.